My question is for Meghan. Meghan, besides holder of briefcase 24 on Deal or No Deal, what do you think your most impactful role was?
I'm sorry.
It's not your fault. I kind of took you out of your natural habitat. I'm surprised you're still breathing. I feel like the focus is starting to shift off of me. Maybe in editing you'll fix it.
Hey, thanks for having us on the show.
It's so awesome to be here. It's great.
You really need to stop thinking in terms of palaces. We have to get jobs. I have to start auditioning again.
Oh yes, you were on the very famous show Suits. More popular in the States than even Friends, you told us.
Yes, that's right, friend. You see, my wife and I
I was totally like, you should write a book because your family's like stupid and then so are like journalists.
What if I told you that 60 seconds of animation could destroy years of carefully crafted public relations? That a single shadowy silhouette could send lawyers scrambling and crisis teams into overdrive? Well, that's exactly what happened when South Park's season 27 premiere hit the airwaves, and the fallout has been nothing short of spectacular. Picture this. Millions of fans settling in for what they thought would be another typical South Park episode. The familiar theme song plays, the opening credits roll, and then bam. In the first minute, sharp-eyed viewers caught something that made the internet explode. A fleeting cutaway shot, a red-haired figure in shadow, a woman in a wide-brimmed hat sipping something suspiciously pink. Now here's where it gets interesting. The creators didn't say a single name. They didn't need to. Within moments, social media erupted like a digital volcano. Screenshots flooded every platform imaginable. "They're back!" screamed one viral post that racked up millions of views. South Park just soft-launched the sequel of the century, but this wasn't just fan speculation running wild. This was something far more calculated, far more devastating, because what looked like a simple visual gag was actually a declaration of war, one that would send shockwaves through the entertainment industry and leave a certain royal couple scrambling for cover.
So nice to have you back in London, Meghan. I've missed our little lunches.
We've never had lunch together, Kate.
Well, we must continue the tradition.
Remember the cultural earthquake that was South Park's first royal roasting? The worldwide privacy tour jokes, the candle-scent mockery, the endless tell-all book references. That episode didn't just poke fun. It fundamentally shifted how millions of people viewed the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. It turned sympathy into skepticism, support into side eyes. And now, the creators were signaling they weren't finished. Not even close. The genius of that opening sequence wasn't its subtlety. It was its boldness. South Park was essentially telling the world, round 2 is coming, and this time we're going even harder. The message was clear. If you thought the first roasting was brutal, you haven't seen anything yet. What made this moment truly explosive wasn't just what appeared on screen, but what it represented. This wasn't random comedy. This was targeted cultural commentary arriving at the worst possible moment for its subjects. Because while that teaser was airing, Meghan was quietly launching her new rosé brand, attempting to pivot from controversial royal exile to aspirational lifestyle guru. The timing? Absolutely devastating. Here's what most people don't realize about how modern celebrity culture works. When South Park sets their sights on you, it's not just about one joke or one episode. It's about becoming a permanent fixture in the cultural conversation, but not in the way you want.
I'm sorry.
It's not your fault. I kind of took you out of your natural habitat. I'm surprised you're still breathing.
You become shorthand for everything the public finds ridiculous about celebrity culture. And that's exactly what was happening all over again. The fan reaction was immediate and merciless. Comment sections exploded with anticipation. "Let's go!" They survived the first dragging, just to get roasted again, wrote one user whose post went viral within hours. Another chimed in, "This is what I've been waiting for since the royal wedding." The hunger for more Sussex satire was palpable, almost violent in its intensity. But here's where the story takes a darker turn. While millions of viewers were sharing screenshots and crafting memes, behind the scenes in Montecito, panic was setting in fast. Sources close to the situation paint a picture of absolute chaos. The moment that teaser aired, phones started ringing. Not casual check-ins or strategy calls, emergency communications, the kind reserved for full-blown reputational crises. Meghan, who had been carefully orchestrating her rebrand as a serene wine entrepreneur, suddenly found herself facing the prospect of being turned into a cartoon punchline all over again. One insider described the scene as controlled panic. Meghan allegedly reached out to her legal team immediately, not for casual advice, but for a full threat assessment. What could they do? What should they do? How do you fight a cartoon? The answer, as they would soon discover, is that you don't. You can't. And that realization sent ripples of fear through their entire operation.
It has been several months now since our beloved queen has died. All Canadians are finding it hard to go on. All Canadians, that is, except for our first guest, the prince and his wife.
Think about the psychology here for a moment. Meghan had spent years crafting a narrative of empowerment, resilience, and sophisticated reinvention. She had moved from actress to royal to activist to entrepreneur, carefully controlling each transition through strategic interviews, polished documentaries, and glossy photo shoots. Every image was curated, every message was focus grouped, every appearance was choreographed. And then along comes South Park, a show that reduces all of that careful construction to crude drawings and brutal punchlines. No amount of PR spin can compete with a joke that makes millions of people laugh. No strategic interview can undo the damage of becoming a cultural meme. But the teaser was just the beginning. What happened next would turn panic into full-blown catastrophe. 48 hours after the premiere, something unprecedented occurred. Images began surfacing in private corners of the internet. Discord servers, locked Twitter circles, exclusive Reddit threads. At first glance, they looked like fan art, crude sketches of familiar figures in compromising cartoon situations. But then eagle-eyed viewers noticed something that changed everything. A small watermark in the corner reading, Scene 14, Act 1. This wasn't fan art. These were internal storyboards, allegedly leaked directly from South Park's animation pipeline. And they were absolutely brutal. The leaked images painted a picture of satire so savage, it made the first episode look gentle by comparison. While the original parody focused on the couple's contradictory desire for privacy, while constantly seeking publicity, these new sketches seemed designed to systematically demolish their credibility.
We want privacy! We want privacy!
One frame reportedly showed Meghan trying to sell empathy in a bottle, while Harry held a measuring cup labeled spare parts, a clear reference to his memoir. Another depicted the couple standing in a vineyard made of broken Spotify logos, a not-so-subtle nod to their failed podcast ventures. The imagery was exaggerated, yes, but it hit uncomfortably close to real headlines, and that's what made it so devastating. Great satire doesn't just make fun, it reveals uncomfortable truths. And these sketches seemed designed to expose every contradiction, every failed venture, every moment of apparent hypocrisy that had accumulated over the years. Within hours, the leaked storyboards were everywhere. Reddit detectives analyzed every frame like they were solving a murder case. Twitter threads dissected the symbolism. YouTube creators dedicated entire videos to breaking down the implications. The internet had turned into a massive focus group, and the verdict was unanimous. This was going to be even more devastating than the first episode. But here's where the story gets really interesting. Because while the internet was having a field day with the leaked images, the real drama was unfolding behind closed doors. Meghan's team went into crisis mode. Legal consultations were scheduled. PR strategies were debated. Damage control plans were drafted and discarded. Because how do you prepare for an attack you can't see coming? How do you defend against jokes that haven't been written yet?
Hey, thanks for having us on the show!
It's so awesome to be here. It's great.
The fundamental problem was this. South Park had turned them into characters in their own show. And once you become a character in someone else's narrative, you lose control of your story. You become reactive instead of proactive. You start responding to jokes instead of creating your own narrative. And that's exactly what was happening. One particularly telling detail emerged from the chaos. Meghan's team allegedly began reaching out to friendly media outlets, not to give statements, but to gauge potential coverage. Would anyone defend them? Would the usual supportive voices speak up? The response was telling and terrifying. Silence. Even their allies were staying quiet, unwilling to risk becoming part of the joke themselves. Because here's the thing about being mocked by South Park. It's contagious. Associate yourself with their targets. and you risk becoming a target yourself. It's cultural quicksand. The more you struggle against it, the deeper you sink. Meanwhile, across the country, one person was taking the leaked storyboards harder than anyone expected: Prince Harry himself. While Meghan was allegedly strategizing with lawyers and publicists, Harry was reportedly having a very different kind of crisis. Sources described him as genuinely shaken by the preview of what was coming. Unlike his wife, who seemed energized by the fight, Harry appeared to be crumbling under the pressure. One particularly heartbreaking detail: Harry was seen making late-night phone calls to former royal advisors, the very people he had publicly distanced himself from.
I don't know what to do. How are we going to pay for school for Archie?
I have to tell you, I never realized so many things cost money. Like this chicken. I bet you had to pay for it.
Not Hollywood agents or celebrity publicists, but the old guard who knew how to navigate media storms without becoming memes in the process. He didn't know who else to trust, one source revealed. He needed guidance, and not the Hollywood kind. The real kind. The kind that knew how to survive without becoming a punchline. This detail reveals something profound about Harry's state of mind. Despite years of therapy, advocacy, and public soul-searching, he was still the same person who had grown up in the royal fishbowl. He understood, perhaps better than anyone, what it meant to have your dignity stripped away by public mockery. And now it was happening all over again, but this time by choice. The leaked storyboards were particularly cruel to Harry. One alleged frame showed him trying to meditate while being pelted with wine bottles labeled Oprah, Netflix, and Spare 2, Still Spare. Another depicted him attempting to film a TikTok apology while being chased by cartoon bees, labeled Public Backlash. For someone who had built his post-royal identity around mental health advocacy and personal growth, seeing himself reduced to a bumbling cartoon character must have been devastating. This wasn't just mockery, it was character assassination by animation. Sources suggest Harry had been hoping to lay low until early next year, potentially rebooting his image with a more subdued public project. But South Park's return to the Sussex story destroyed those plans before they could even begin. How do you rebrand yourself when you're simultaneously being turned into a cartoon villain?
So let me start with you, sir. You've lived a life with the royal family, you've had everything handed to you, but you say your life has been hard, and now you've written all about it in your new book, Where?
The isolation was reportedly profound. Harry's team made quiet inquiries to royal-friendly media outlets in the UK, not to give statements, but to test the waters. Would the palace defend him? Would anyone from his old life step in to help? The answer was a resounding no. Even those who had once been close to Harry within the royal machinery seemed to be keeping their distance. Rumors circulated that even Prince William wasn't returning his brother's messages, though this remained unconfirmed. Whether true or not, the perception of abandonment was clearly affecting Harry deeply. And this is where the story becomes truly tragic. Harry had given up everything: his royal duties, his military appointments, his relationship with his family, partly to protect his wife from the kind of public mockery he had watched destroy his mother. And now, that same mockery was returning with interest, and he was powerless to stop it. But personal drama was just one part of a much larger story. Because while Harry was allegedly spiraling and Meghan was strategizing, the real earthquake was happening in corporate boardrooms across Hollywood. The entertainment industry runs on image. Brands don't just partner with celebrities. They partner with their perception in the public mind. And when that perception becomes synonymous with parody, the financial consequences can be swift and brutal. Within days of the South Park teaser, industry insiders were reporting a distinct chill in the air around anything Sussex related. Not outright cancellations, but something perhaps worse: hesitation.
I'm sorry, I'm just really stressed. We're completely out of money.
Maybe it's time we dip into your fortune from Suits.
There is no fortune from Suits.
In an industry where momentum is everything, hesitation is death. One marketing executive who works with luxury lifestyle brands put it bluntly: when your image becomes synonymous with parody, you become toxic to premium advertisers. Brands don't want comedy. They want aspiration, elegance, exclusivity. Once you become a joke, the respect vanishes. This wasn't just theoretical. Sources suggest several upcoming collaborations that Meghan's team had been quietly developing. wellness partnerships, digital content series, lifestyle brand extensions were suddenly being, quote, reconsidered. Not canceled outright, but placed on indefinite hold pending, quote, market assessment. The timing couldn't have been worse. Meghan's rosé launch was supposed to signal a sophisticated pivot from controversial celebrity to lifestyle guru. Instead of conjuring images of sun-drenched vineyards and elegant dinner parties, the dominant visual was becoming her cartoon doppelganger getting roasted on national television. Even internal team members were reportedly nervous. There's no playbook for this, one anonymous Archewell staffer allegedly admitted. We've got crisis plans for political backlash, negative reviews, even another royal memoir controversy.
Hi, I'm Meghan Markle,
And I'm Harry. Harry.
and we're royally screwed.
But we don't have a plan for being a permanent punchline. The ripple effects were spreading faster than anyone anticipated. Netflix, already lukewarm on the couple's content after their documentary's mixed reception, was reportedly monitoring public sentiment closely. One executive source told a trade publication, "It's not our job to babysit reputations. If the public turns, they turn." This is the brutal mathematics of celebrity culture. You can survive controversy, you can survive criticism, you can even survive scandal, but you cannot survive irrelevance. And irrelevance is exactly what happens when you become a cartoon character, beloved by audiences precisely because you're ridiculous. The most devastating part? The royal family was watching all of this unfold, with what sources described as pointed indifference. While Meghan and Harry's world was imploding, the mood across the pond was surprisingly calm. Royal sources made it clear there would be no intervention, no defense, no protective statements, just an eerie, calculated silence that spoke volumes. No one's lifting a finger to help them, one former courtier stated bluntly, not after everything. That everything, of course, referred to years of interviews, documentaries, and barely veiled accusations that had painted the royal family as cold, racist, and dysfunctional. From the Oprah interview to Harry's tell-all memoir, the couple had used their royal connections as both backdrop and antagonist in their ongoing narrative of victimhood and liberation. Now that the Sussex brand was under attack, the palace had no appetite for protection. In fact, some insiders seemed to be enjoying the spectacle.
You gotta be kidding me. I've brought plenty of conflict to the show.
I'm sorry, Meghan. It's just not working out. All you talked about all season was your line of ketchup.
One senior royal aide was allegedly overheard chuckling about South Park coming back for seconds, while another reportedly joked that maybe the show should handle the next coronation coverage. The most interesting reaction, according to sources, came from Prince William. When shown the South Park teaser, he reportedly smirked. Just a brief expression, but in royal terms, that's practically a press release. The same source claimed William found the situation amusing, not because he hates his brother, but because it confirms what many in the royal orbit already believe, that Harry and Meghan lost the plot years ago. You make yourself into a brand instead of a person, the source explained, and then you're shocked when people start reviewing it, satirizing it, tearing it apart. There was also speculation that the palace had quietly instructed their press liaisons to avoid commenting under any circumstances. The strategy was simple: let South Park burn the Sussex brand to the ground without royal fingerprints on the matches. This calculated silence was perhaps more devastating than any active criticism could have been. It sent a clear message. Harry and Meghan were on their own. The institution they had spent years criticizing wasn't going to save them from the consequences of their choices. But the royal family's indifference was just one part of a much larger cultural phenomenon. Because once South Park signals that someone is fair game, the entire comedy ecosystem takes notice. Within hours of the teaser airing, the Sussex mockery industrial complex kicked into high gear. TikTok creators began stitching together clips from the previous episode with new theories about the upcoming roast. YouTube commentators dedicated entire videos to analyzing the implications. Stand-up comedians workshopped Sussex material at comedy clubs across the country. The phrase "we still want privacy," the satirical battle cry from the first episode, exploded across social media all over again. One TikTok user created a fake trailer for the new South Park episode, featuring cartoon Meghan crying into a goblet of rosé, while Harry Googled how to cancel satire.
Bravo fired me. Well, not really, but basically, they only offered me friend of the housewives for next season.
It wasn't even real, but people believed it was. That's how hungry the internet had become for more Sussex content. Late-night hosts jumped on the bandwagon with enthusiasm. Jimmy Kimmel joked that South Park's writers weren't just back, they were reloading. He cracked a one-liner about Meghan's rosé being the official drink of pretending not to read the comments, and the audience ate it up. Even Stephen Colbert, typically softer on royal commentary, couldn't resist joking that the Duke and Duchess of Montecito were reportedly, quote, shaken, probably by the tannins. YouTube channels with millions of followers began dissecting the alleged leaked storyboards, frame by frame, treating them like archaeological artifacts. Podcasts dedicated entire episodes to the upcoming roast, building anticipation like it was a sporting event rather than a cartoon episode. The most brutal moment came from an unexpected source, a rising comedian at the Laugh Factory who opened her set with a wine review.
So you hate journalists? That's right. And now you wrote a book that reports on the lives of the royal family. Right. So you're a journalist.
Meghan's rosé pairs perfectly with hypocrisy and delusion, she deadpanned. Notes of victimhood with a finish of manufactured outrage. The bit got clipped, posted, and shared over 10 million times. This wasn't just mockery, it was a cultural celebration of mockery. The internet had turned Sussex bashing into a participatory sport, and everyone wanted to play. Parody accounts launched overnight. Duchess of Chardonnay gained 100,000 followers in 3 days. Prince of Wine became a trending hashtag. Fake reviews of Meghan's rosé flooded wine forums with users pretending to cry into their glasses while reading spare chapters. The whole phenomenon had become fun, a social bonding experience that united people across political and cultural divides. And that's the one thing no PR team can fight against. When mockery becomes entertainment, and entertainment becomes community, you're not facing a crisis. You're facing a cultural movement. And Meghan's team was watching all of it, taking notes, and slowly realizing they were fighting a war they had already lost.
Please stop sending me samples.
I hear you, Andy. I'll amp it up. I'll smash a wine glass. I'll tell Kyle she has Munchausen syndrome. I'll accuse Dorit of doing coke.
By the end of the week, even the most optimistic members of the Sussex inner circle had to acknowledge reality. Another South Park episode wasn't just likely, it was inevitable. And this time, they needed to be ready. The first strategy floated was predictable. A surprise sit-down interview with a sympathetic outlet. Not Oprah. Those bridges were rumored to be thoroughly burned, but someone softer, more maternal. The goal was to humanize Meghan again, to recenter the narrative around resilience, motherhood, and mental health. Including Harry in the interview was discussed but quickly dismissed. He's not in a good headspace right now, one source admitted. Putting him in front of cameras would be a disaster. Alternative strategies were brainstormed with increasing desperation. A carefully timed charity appearance. A visit to a women's shelter or children's hospital. Something visual, emotional, and undeniably positive that could shift the narrative away from mockery and toward sympathy. But even these ideas hit roadblocks. Multiple outlets allegedly refused early access, not because they didn't support the causes, but because they were terrified of becoming part of the joke themselves. One digital editor at a legacy publication reportedly told her team, "We're not touching Meghan content until that episode drops. We don't want to publish a puff piece on Wednesday and get torched by cartoons on Thursday." This was perhaps the most telling sign of how completely the narrative had shifted. Even friendly media was hesitating, unwilling to risk their own credibility by association. Smaller ideas were floated, a heartfelt Instagram video, a handwritten letter campaign, a surprise podcast appearance. But every concept felt reactive, desperate, defensive. Every pitch was essentially an admission that they were losing control of their own story. The Daily Sentiment reports that Archwell's communications team began painted a grim picture. Public opinion wasn't just critical, it was dismissive. Even Meghan's usually loyal celebrity allies were staying quiet. No supportive Instagram stories from former co-stars. No public statements from podcast friends. No solidarity from fellow lifestyle entrepreneurs.
Dad, do you have any cash for a cab? Oh, look, Grandma's on the money. I never noticed that before.
One high-profile media contact reportedly responded to a request for coverage with a single word: can't. Why? Because everyone in the entertainment world understood exactly what was happening. South Park wasn't just preparing another episode. They were circling for the kill. They had already drawn blood, and they weren't finished. Any attempt to spin Meghan as a victim now risked being referenced directly in the upcoming episode, animated, exaggerated, and broadcast to millions. Every move they make right now is a setup, one crisis management expert observed. They're playing chess against satirists who are thinking 3 moves ahead, and they're still stuck in checkers mode. This left the Sussex team with an almost impossible choice: brace for impact and say nothing, hoping the episode would be less devastating than feared, or make one last desperate move and risk having that very desperation animated for public consumption. Because according to industry insiders, the South Park creators weren't just watching the headlines. They were waiting for a reaction. Every nervous move Meghan made was potentially feeding material for their next joke. And that's when everyone realized the true genius of what Trey Parker and Matt Stone had accomplished. They hadn't just created a cartoon episode, they had created a psychological trap. Every response validated the original premise.
We just want to be normal people. All this attention is so hard. Isn't it true, sir, that your questionable wife has her own TV show and hangs out with celebrities and does fashion magazines?
Every defensive move became evidence of the criticism's accuracy. Every attempt at damage control became part of the joke. The creators, meanwhile, were reportedly enjoying every minute of the chaos they had unleashed. Sources close to the South Park production team painted a picture of writers who were not just immune to celebrity outrage, but actively energized by it. You think they're gonna blink because of a wine label and a Montecito panic attack? Laughed one former Comedy Central executive. They've been sued by billionaires, shadow banned by entire religions, threatened by world leaders. Meghan and Harry aren't scary, they're inspiration. The silence from Parker and Stone was entirely intentional. No interviews, no social media hints, no public statements. The lack of comment was itself a comment, a signal that they were sitting on something big and didn't need to hype it because the anticipation was doing the work for them. Legal experts made it crystal clear that any attempt to stop the episode would be futile at best, counterproductive at worst. Parody is protected speech. Satire is legally untouchable, and South Park represents the gold standard of both. Even if they wanted to sue, they'd get laughed out of court, one media attorney explained. And worse, any legal action would just guarantee more airtime, more jokes, more headlines. It would be the legal equivalent of pouring gasoline on a fire. But perhaps the most devastating revelation was this. Parker and Stone had allegedly anticipated the backlash and written it into the upcoming episode.
And you know what else? To hell with Canada! We are leaving! We'll go find some quiet place where we can be normal people! Come on, wife!
Sources with knowledge of the script claimed the show might feature cartoon versions of Meghan's team trying to issue takedown notices, only to face even more ridiculous animated consequences. It was classic South Park, a perpetual motion machine of satire that consumed real-world reactions as fuel for additional mockery, and Meghan had walked directly into it. Even Comedy Central seemed to be leaning into the controversy rather than backing away from it. No executives were demanding edits. No promotional campaigns were being pulled back. If anything, there were whispers that they were preparing for a feature-length special rather than just a regular episode. The most brutal sign that the creators were completely unbothered came during a recent live Q&A session. When asked about inspiration sources, Parker reportedly laughed and said, "Sometimes you don't have to look for it. It shows up in a pink wine bottle and asks for privacy." The crowd roared with laughter. He didn't name names. He didn't have to. Everyone knew exactly who he was talking about. And that casual dismissal was more devastating than any formal statement could have been. This is what happens when satirists stop seeing you as off-limits royalty and start seeing you as recurring characters in their ongoing show. You're no longer writing your own narrative. You're just material for someone else's punchlines. So now the question that's hanging over Hollywood, Buckingham Palace, and every group chat in between is painfully simple. Can Meghan and Harry survive another round of animated humiliation?
Who's that?
That's your nephew, Archie.
You're pulling my leg. Why have we not met before?
You've met him like 1,000 times.
Because this time, it's not just about one joke or one episode. This time, it's about a fundamental shift in how the public perceives them. The first South Park parody marked the beginning of what cultural critics called the Great Eye Roll, a moment when even sympathetic audiences started questioning the Sussex narrative of constant victimhood and reinvention. But back then, there was still goodwill in reserve. There was still curiosity about their story, still benefit of the doubt about their motives. Now the tone has shifted completely. The moment the new teaser dropped, the reaction wasn't, "How could they do this to Meghan?" It was, "Oh, here we go again." That shift from sympathy to anticipation, from concern to entertainment, represents something profound. The collective goodwill that had sustained the Sussex brand for years had evaporated, replaced by collective side-eye and barely concealed amusement. And the timing couldn't be more devastating. Meghan's carefully orchestrated rebrand, this soft, wine-sipping, feminine empowerment pivot, was being mocked before it could even take root. Her rosé line, which was supposed to signal a transition from controversial celebrity to lifestyle credibility, had become a punchline before the first bottle was even sold.
So all you'd have to do is Instagram yourselves using my ketchup. It'd be a huge help.
I see. Well, that's something we'll definitely think about.
Harry, meanwhile, was being redrawn from a symbol of mental health advocacy and royal rebellion into a helpless, brooding caricature of regret and poor decision-making. The very qualities that had once made him sympathetic, his vulnerability, his struggles, his desire to protect his family, were being transformed into ammunition for mockery. This is exactly what Meghan had feared most, that after years of media control, strategic interviews, and carefully curated content, their story would slip out of their hands and become something else entirely. Not their version, not the palace's version, but everyone's joke. The ripple effects were already spreading beyond entertainment into serious business consequences. One of Meghan's potential documentary projects, a fashion-forward behind-the-scenes look at her creative process, had reportedly been indefinitely shelved by a major streaming platform. The official reason was vague, but industry insiders understood the real message. Too much risk, too much potential for ridicule. Talent agents were getting nervous too. One representative allegedly advised a new client to avoid any association with Meghan's brand until the smoke clears. The suggestion being that association with the Sussex brand had become professionally toxic.
Well, it's an apartment, so.
Yes, an apartment palace, I know that. Lots of tiny palaces inside one big palace.
Meanwhile, the royal family's continued silence was sending its own powerful message. Courtiers reportedly believed that letting Harry and Meghan face this media reckoning alone served a greater purpose, reinforcing the lesson that you can leave the crown, but you can't replace it with content deals and celebrity activism. The strategy was working. Harry and Meghan were no longer being perceived as brave truth-tellers standing up to an archaic institution. Instead, they were increasingly seen as overexposed influencers, trying to spin every setback into a redemption arc, every criticism into evidence of their victimization.
Thanks. Okay, see you later. Oh, would you pick up some milk?
And that perception shift was perhaps more dangerous than any single episode could be. Because when you stop being controversial and start being ridiculous, you're not far from being irrelevant. So what happens if this next South Park episode really lands as hard as everyone expects? What if it's the final blow to whatever credibility the Sussex brand still maintains? What if Meghan and Harry stop being cultural lightning rods and start being cultural footnotes? Because that's the ultimate risk here. Not just mockery, not just backlash, but indifference. The cruelest fate for any celebrity isn't being hated, it's being ignored. And South Park has a unique talent for transforming cultural figures into permanent punchlines, forever frozen in amber at their most ridiculous moment. The question now isn't whether the episode will air. All signs point to that being inevitable. The question is whether Meghan and Harry's brand can survive another round of animated assassination, or whether this cartoon comeback represents the beginning of their cultural irrelevance. One thing is certain.
Why did you bring that with you again, Harry?
You know, in case someone wants a massage, I'll do a few out calls.
The next few weeks will determine whether the Duke and Duchess of Sussex remain players in the cultural conversation, or whether they become permanent residents of South Park's Rogues Gallery, forever remembered not for their royal rebellion or their advocacy work, but for being the couple who couldn't take a joke. The countdown has begun. The internet is watching. And somewhere in Colorado, two satirists are putting the finishing touches on what might be the most brutal 22 minutes of television comedy in recent memory. So what do you think? Can the Sussex brand survive this animated onslaught? Or is this cartoon comeback the beginning of the end for their cultural relevance? The next chapter of this story is about to be written in ink and animation, and once it airs, there might be no coming back from the punchline.